All right. Hey, everybody, and welcome to the last segment of weeks 3 and 4. And we're going to go over the schedule for these 2 weeks so that you guys have a really good sense of, now we've talked about all these practices. Basically, how are we going to fit everything in? Because, we're doing, if I can do just a quick run through, Bri, before we dive into it, right? We're doing that exercise of training the will, or we're intending to do that every day, right? For 5 minutes a day, where we're standing on a chair or we're doing the Superman pose. Then we've got the Lucid Dream Meditation that we can do 2 to 3 times a week, which is a 24-minute meditation. We're continuing to write down our dreams, which you've said is now, like, going forward, that's a practice that we should adopt and carry through with as long as we want to really pursue and make this part of our life.
Right.
And then we're looking for those dream signs. We're spending a little time looking through our dreams that we've recorded, and trying to find those recurring themes, those recurring people or places or objects, and really getting a handle on what our dream signs are. And then throughout our days, we want to spend, if we can, 5 to 10 times of 1 minute throughout the day revisiting those dreams and actually just reading. And maybe it's just a sentence or two of when that dream sign occurs, or maybe it's just a prominent dream from that night, right? Or just a piece of a dream, but just hooking back into the dreaming state and making it more important to us. And then finally, this last piece where we want to start to pare away those things that we don't want, that self-pity or indulgences, or just the barriers in our own mind that keep us from achieving the goal. So we've got, doing the observation of mind meditation again, maybe 1 to 2 times over the course of the next couple of weeks. And as you said before we got on this review call, doing the burning meditation at least once a week and really making that a part of our practice. And in this case, we're going to be doing it with those barriers that we've identified through our observation, with that attitude of non-judgment, that observation of our mind. So this is a really packed couple of weeks. We got a lot of stuff going on, and I feel like, for me, I know that my schedule, because I've put a lot of, I've made this kind of work important over the years. I've been working with Brian for almost a decade now. So it's kind of like I already have places within my schedule where I can put a lot of this stuff. And so, but I can easily, sense that, people could be overwhelmed by either the quantity or of new things that we're doing, or, it may be numbers wise, and you add it up, it's not that much, but it can certainly sound overwhelming when I rattle it all off. So I don't know, maybe we can just talk about that and ways to approach it.
Yeah, because I think overwhelm is one of those things that can really, really kick people off the path, right? When, we're not monks, we don't live in a monastery, right? We have real lives. And, a lot of these things, we're sort of, we're spending time up front with them. We're putting attention on them up front because we're trying to generate a certain amount of momentum, right? And to get into a place. But, remember that, once you achieve the goal of getting into a lucid state, a number of times, right? And when you get in there and you have more control, because it's not necessary, it's not always the case where we have ultimate control as soon as we get in, right? It's like there's lots of times when we're sort of tripping over ourselves. But once we do, a lot of these practices, will be done in that state. So it's not like for the rest of your life you're going to be doing, burning meditation 10 times a week forever, and it's like,
Right.
that's not the case, right? So the idea is that, most of these energetic practices are amplified when they're done in that lucid state, right? So it's a much easier way to go. So there is some of that payoff too. As we get there, there's going to be more time opened up here, right? As we do more and more of these practices there. But in the beginning, obviously, you got to ante up. And the thing that we're anteing up with is our time, right? And our energy to do the practices and get to that place. So that's important. But, use your own level of discernment with the practices, right? Like if you're going like, oh man, I'm still feeling really apprehensive about some of these, getting into a lucid dream. Oh my God, it's like, I don't know how I'm going to handle that, the transition, whatever that is. It's like maybe you need to do the burning meditation more, right? And put some of the other stuff aside a bit, right? And so, because without that, you're not going to get to the place you need to go or you want to go, right? Because you've got to burn off these barriers first. And so, but maybe you've really got it down. You're like, oh man, I'm so excited. I can't wait to get into that lucid dreaming state. It's like, I don't care what happens, and so instead of the burning meditation as much, maybe you do it once a week, right? And so then the rest of it is, you're working on reviewing your dreams, doing the dreaming meditation, right? The lucid dreaming meditation, the 24-minute one. You're augmenting it, the practices to fit your profile, right? And, really being brutally honest with yourself about where you are at this point. We've just started, right? But where are you? Where are you sort of panning out? That's really important to sort of always, sort of keep a handle on yourself and say, oh, okay, if I'm going to, pull myself out of this and look at myself objectively, bird's eye view, how am I doing? Am I feeling overwhelmed? And if so, why? We've made our schedule last week. We wrote it down, right? I hope people did. And so you can see the places where you can steal time, right? You can sacrifice some TV to do a practice. You can do this, you can do that. You can manipulate and say like, oh boy, there's a lot more space there than I thought there was. And maybe some days it's like, wow, there's no space there. So, we have to look at those things and say, okay, it's a practical application of these things, right? It's not like if you just pound yourself into the floor, you're not going to be able to last. You're not going to have the legs that we need to make a practice this profound over a period of time, because it does take time to get in there, right? So, and to make it what you want, right? So again, look at it, treat yourself, treat yourself like somebody that, you really want the best for, right? If it was your child and they were saying, I really want to do this, but I can't find the time and I don't know, I'm getting overwhelmed. And, it's like, we would look at them and say like, well, if it's that important to you, let's look at your schedule and see, it's like, oh, how, maybe you could take some time out of this and maybe you could do, it doesn't have to be this brutal pounding, right? It's like, I'm trying to always balance those two things. I mean, I'm definitely harder on myself than anybody on the outside. Even my teachers of the past, were not as hard as I was on myself. So I have that side that, maybe I even like pounding myself like that. And that's why I'm so adamant about burning that stuff off, because I don't want other people to go through that. I put myself through a lot of stuff that I didn't have to do. It wasn't part of the requirement, right? I just felt like in my head, I had this, kind of ridiculous idea that I had to do that, right? I had to go farther, faster, more. If you wanted to do, 3 times burning meditation a week, I had to do 6 times burning meditation a week. If you needed to get up at, 5:30, I wanted to get up at 4:30, so that one stuck. But other than that, so it's like, you don't have to do that. You want to treat yourself like you matter, right? So it's like, and if you wouldn't do that to somebody you really cared about. So you'd find some way to sort of look at it realistically and say, if it was my son, I'd be like, well, pal, your schedule's really packed. I mean, how much do you really want to do this? And if he was like, I really want to do this more than anything else, I'm like, well, where are we going to sacrifice to get that time? What are you willing to give up to do that? And so, you look at those things and you help them work through that. I want you to do the same thing with yourself, and you can't put all of these practices in every day, forever. It's just, you'd have to be a monk, right? And even the monks have to go and work. They work in the gardens, they go, food, and, they have chores to do too, right? It's not just praying all day long. So, there's things to do, and you have obligations and responsibilities. So, be compassionate with yourself and say, like, okay, this is what I can do. This is important to me. Here's where, I'm going to sacrifice this thing, on that day to put this practice into place. Look, a 24-minute meditation, lucid dreaming meditation, if most sitcoms are 30 minutes, right? So if you have this one that, it's just sort of like, yeah, okay, I could take it or leave it. I just do it because it's something to do. Take yourself out and be disciplined enough to go and do that, right? You're still, you're going to have a few minutes left over from that, right? So it's like, those are the things. Like, we look at where the sacrifices could come from that you're willing to do, and you will do it. And that's really important.
I think another thing that really helped me was, actually, I was having a really hard week, and my girlfriend is really good actually about scheduling stuff. And so Kira looks at me, she's like, man, you just got to sit down and write out all the things you need to do, and then decide where you have time in your schedule and just put them on the calendar. And I was like, I resisted it so much. I was like, I'm just gonna do what I can when I have time, and like just fit in. But she got me to do it, and even can't even tell you like how I felt like a weight was lifted when I took all the stuff that I felt like I was overwhelmed by, and just like was like, okay, this is when I have time to do this piece. This is when I have time to do this piece. And then it was like, I could let it go, and all that weight wasn't on my mind anymore. It was just like, this is what I have time for. This is what I don't have time for. And again, with that whole thing about chastising yourself, it's like, you already decided that you don't have time for it, and you can let it go. It's nothing. You're not going to, beat yourself up about not doing something, because you already realize that there's just not time for that. Right. So,
right.
So I think that, for me, at least, having written out my schedule and knowing that there's a lot that we've presented already and that I'm going to have to do too, because I'm doing it with everybody. Right. I'm just going to sit down and be like, okay, here's where I can put these things, and spend, half an hour or so, like just planning it out. And then I'll be able to like let it go. What I can do, I can do. What I can't. So that's how I'm going to approach it,
Right. And we pare away and, and add as we, see ourselves going through the program, and, where we have the most need, right? So if it's in burning away stuff that we don't want, cleaning our energetic space within us, from all the things that are sort of tripping us up, then that's where your priorities lie, and everything else is sort of gravy on top of that, right? So, but, the idea is, sort of really taking that objective view and saying, okay, no judgment. It's just like, here's where I am right now. Here's where I want to be. What's the easiest way for me to get from A to Z, in the most efficient way without killing myself, right? It's like, there's no, if you overwhelm yourself, you're not going to get there either, right? And it's like, it's not even like our goal is business, right? So it's not like I can, say, okay, for the next month, I'm going to sacrifice 2 hours of sleep every night. It's like, sleep? No, you've got to, that's like a primary goal, is to get your sleep pattern down, right? So it's like, we don't even have the luxury of pulling from something, even though we shouldn't. A lot of people do, right? When they're trying to work on something that's really important to them, they sacrifice their own sleep patterns in order to find more time. And I'm like, you don't have to do that. That's why I wanted people to do the schedule, so you could see the places where you could put things. And, when it's staring you in the face, you can't go like, oh, well, I don't really have time, just like you did. It's like, oh, when I can do all this, when I have time, I'll do it. But when you write it down, it's like, oh, okay, here's what I can do. And, here's where I can put these in. And then the next week, it's like, oh, I can pull this one out of here and put this one in, which is more important. And, so you start manipulating your practices, and, to get the the biggest bang for your buck, basically, right? So it's like you're constantly adjusting. And I constantly adjust my schedule. It's like I have a certain form that I go through daily, depending on the day of the week and all of that. But then there are variances, right? And so it's like, as I go through certain times of the year or things come up, right, I'm switching certain things out and putting those in, and adjusting constantly. Because if you're not flexible and adjusting, I mean, it's like, it's too rigid, right? There's no life there. It's not, you don't want to be this dried up husk that just repeats the same thing day in and day out, regardless of the result or not result, right? You're just sort of in this pattern that's not productive for you. So, and doesn't, the opposite is not true either. Just willy-nilly changing things up because you just feel like everything's got to be changed all the time. It's like, no, you want to evaluate it truthfully as much as you can, and then make those adjustments so that, again, always judging it by, the end result that you're getting from the pieces of the practice that you're doing. Is it achieving the goal? Do you have goals for each of these practices? You should. I want to burn this away so that I feel better about myself and I feel better about, doing the practices, if it's like what we went through with the burning meditation. So, or, I really want to instill more emphasis on dreams so that I have more of them and I remember more of them every night. Well, good. So I'm going to make them imbibing the dreams or the dream signs a priority, and that's going to be my priority. So it's like all of those things. It varies slightly for each person. We're all a little bit different. So you'll get them all in. It's no problem, right? It's just that here's where we've added so many things that now we're going to, and we're not going to stop, right? We're going to add more things in. So you're going to have more adjustments to make as time goes on, but some of that stuff will go away and we're going to replace it with other things. So it's like, but if you get used to manipulating your schedule like that and putting things in where you need to, then it's just a matter of plucking one out and putting another one in the same spot, right? So not such a big deal at that point. You master your time, basically.
Right. Cool. Sounds good, man. I hope that everybody who's coming into this with like a lot of enthusiasm and excitement for lucid dreaming isn't starting to go like, holy hell, who are these crazy people that do these practices all the time? What have I got myself into, Like,
Right. Oh my God, it's like the Tony Robbins of spirituality. What the hell?
These guys are brutal.
You scared me.
Ridiculous.
That's
all right. Well, cool. You guys will have to let us know how it goes on the live call, and and I'll be checking in a week's time and let you know how it's going. So, thanks for all the training, Bri.
Hey, no problem. Thanks
Up
for
and
all
away.
the suffering.
You got it. Oh, man, no problem.
All right. I'll talk to you later.
All right. See ya.
Bye.